Okay, well, it is 6:30, and I want to be mindful of everybody's time today, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to Cooking with Plants, and our focus today is going to be beans and legumes. I'm Kelly Wilson. I'm a registered dietitian here at Trinity Health Ann Arbor, and I'll tell you about myself in a little bit, but I just want to get started with a few housekeeping things. Right now, everybody is muted, and you don't have the ability to take yourself off mute. And we did that not because we don't want you to ask questions, but because we're a big group and we want to minimize, accidental background noise. So if you do have questions, please, there's a Q&A button at the top. You'll see like a bunch of icons at the top of your toolbar, and you'll see like a hand raised, a little grid. Right in between that grid and a icon that says rooms, there's Q&A. It's a little like word bubble. If you have a question that comes up during class, please drop your question into that Q&A. My colleague Abby, who's on the call, will be monitoring that Q&A for me. And if the question is relevant to our conversation, she'll interrupt me for you to ask that question, and I'll answer it. If we do not get to your question in the course of class, and your question is relevant to the whole group, I will answer it via email and send out the response to everybody who's participating tonight. Okay. We are recording tonight as well, and yay, we got over our hurdle of being able to share recordings. So we will have this available on the class website so that you can go back and watch it, or you can share it with folks who may not have been able to join us tonight. And if you don't have the link to the class website, no stress. At the end of class today, I'll share a QR code that has the direct link to that class website, and you can just scan it and it'll take you right there. That's where all of our recipes for today are going to live as well. Some folks also asked about having closed captioning available during the conversation today. To add that, you go up to the three dots on the top of your toolbar where it says more. You click on that. You go down to language and speech, select that, and then there's turn on live captions. Okay, and that'll mostly capture everything I'm saying fairly accurately. So if you want to add that, feel free to go ahead and do that. All right, let's go ahead and get started. And remember, drop those questions into that Q&A as we go. All right, so who am I and why am I here with you tonight? Like I said before, my name's Kelly Wilson. I'm a registered dietitian and a board certified lifestyle medicine practitioner. And I'm with Trinity Health Ann Arbor, the lifestyle medicine department here at the hospital. What is lifestyle medicine? Glad you asked. Lifestyle medicine is a evidence-based field that is focused around 6 key pillars. So nutrition, which we're going to be covering throughout this class series, is one of them. So a focus on a whole food, plant-forward diet. Movement, so finding ways to move your body that feels good for you. Stress reduction, so managing your stress. Social connection, restorative sleep, and avoiding risky substances. So our team focuses on care for individuals through the lens of all 6 of those pillars, and we do classes like this and one-on-one coaching support. And if it's something that you're interested in learning more about, I'll have our contact information on a slide at the end of class as well. We'd be happy to talk more. I'm also trained in culinary genomics, which is kind of weaving the art and science of cooking with the concepts of how food influences the expression of certain genes. So pretty cool. The food that we eat can turn on and off certain genes that can promote health or promote disease. So we'll talk about that through some of our courses. And then I also have a background in organic farming. I was a farmer for several years, so I bring that kind of local food lens to our conversations as well. I'm a big believer that anybody can cook no matter where you are and what tools you have. Even if you don't think you can right now, I promise you, you are able to cook. If you're able to, pick up a tool and grab a mixing bowl, you can cook. Our recipes today are going to be tasty but simple, and easy to prepare for anybody. So no complicated ingredients or tools necessary. Um, and I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the rest of our lifestyle medicine team. I am not the only one in our department. We've got a whole wonderful team. Laura Ritter is here with me in studio today. She's kind of helping behind the scenes in a very important role. She's one of our certified diabetes educators, also lifestyle medicine board certified dietitian. Abby McCleary, who I mentioned, she's our colleague lifestyle wellness coordinator, and she's on the call helping with the questions. Our director, Lisa, is on the call as well. And Clisty, she is our whiz behind the scenes for us, helping with all sorts of technology, nuts and bolts. And then we have 2 lifestyle medicine certified physicians, Dr. Daniel and Dr. Liu, who also are part of our team. So a lot of us who are invested in this whole field of lifestyle medicine and whole person evidence-based care. So where are we going? This is our whole series overview. So last month we focused on the basics of stocking your whole food plant-based pantry and some kitchen tools. And if you missed it, you can catch the recording on our class website. Again, the QR code for that will be shared at the end of class. And then today we're focusing on beans and legumes. If you want to sign up for any more of the classes in this series, that QR code on your screen will take you to the registration form. If you happen to only sign up for today, but others look interesting, scan that code, fill out the form, and you'll get the links to future classes. The goal of this series is kind of to help you build your plant-based cooking toolbox. So each class will build on the other one a little bit, but you can also attend each class as one-offs. You don't have to attend the whole series. You'll still get a lot of valuable information out of it regardless. Okay. So today, like I said, we're focusing on legumes and what the heck are legumes even, and their health benefits. And we're going to make 3 recipes that are delicious, comforting, and are well received by a wide variety of palates. So we've got a curried cauliflower stew, black bean tacos, which I made with middle school kids and they gave them the thumbs up. So I think we're all going to like these. And then our garbanzo bean salad. So like a tuna salad, but instead of tuna, we're using garbanzo beans. And I always, before we dive into the content, want to give a quick disclaimer to let folks know that the information I'm providing is pretty general. So if you have a specific health condition, some of the content may not apply for you, or you may need a more intensive approach than what we're talking about today. So if you have a specific health condition or concern, I definitely encourage you to speak with your physician or your dietitian before making major overhauls to your diet. Now, with that being said, eating a plant-forward diet is not harmful. Anybody can benefit from adding more plants. But if you have a specific health concern that you're interested in learning how you can really dial in your diet to support your specific health condition, talking to your doctor and a registered dietitian is really important. So, and if you don't have a registered dietitian that you're already connected with, please feel free to email our lifestyle medicine team and we can help you get connected with somebody who could support you. All right, so now beans and legumes. We're going to do a quick overview and then get on to our recipes, which I'm sure is what y'all are mostly interested in. All right, so what is a legume? Anyways, we hear that word thrown around a lot. Legumes are nitrogen fixing plants. So what I'm putting my farmer hat on right now. And what that means is they have this really amazing ability to take nitrogen from our atmosphere and fix it in the soil. They have a really cool relationship with soil microbiota, and they're able to pull the nitrogen from the air, bring it down into the soil, and then other plants can utilize that nitrogen for growth. So nitrogen is really important for plant growth. It's part of fertilizer. So these nitrogen fixing plants are really valuable as part of crop rotations. You may have heard that because they're helping to add a lot of good nutrition to the soil. Examples of legumes would be beans, but like we're going to be talking about peas, lentils, soybeans, and peanuts are actually a legume. But I put some little asterisks next to peanuts because those are a higher fat legume. And so we typically, from a nutritional perspective, even though botanically it's kind of in the same family as beans and peas and lentils, from a nutrition perspective, we put that more in the nuts and seeds and the healthy fats category. So we're not going to be talking about peanuts today, but we'll be talking about all the other things. So beans, peas, lentils, soybeans. That's what we're focused on. You may have also heard of these plants being called pulses. It's another common term that's thrown around. So just know that legume, pulse, interchangeable with peas, beans, lentils, soybeans. A serving size, a standard kind of serving size of legumes is about a quarter cup of a dip. So think of like a hummus or a half cup cooked. Okay, so why are we so excited about legumes? Well, because they are nutritional powerhouses. And this slide kind of details some of those, and we'll go into a little bit more detail here. They're full of polyphenols, which is a fancy word for plant compounds that do a lot of good stuff for our body. So they're full of antioxidants, they're full of these compounds, like I mentioned earlier, that are helping to turn off and on genes that are health promoting. They are chock full of fiber, which is one of the reasons we talk a lot about them in this whole food plant-based diet. Fiber has so many health benefits, and most people who follow kind of our standard American diet don't get enough high quality fiber in their diet. And fiber, why it's so important, it can help us lower cholesterol. It can act kind of like a sponge. It increases our feeling of fullness, also known as satiety. So it keeps us full longer, and it can help with blood sugar control. So we don't get it's not a quick digested, fast blood sugar spike. It's a slow, steady blood sugar increase. So we get stable blood sugars. And then fiber has also been shown to be protective of certain types of cancer. Um, when we're talking about the fiber in beans, you may have heard, there's insoluble and soluble fiber. The fiber in beans is predominantly that soluble fiber, so we absorb it, and that's how, especially with cholesterol, it's acting like that sponge, kind of mopping up that cholesterol for us. Recommendations for fiber, we talked about it, I think, a little bit last week, but just to review, between 25 and 38 grams per day is what we're looking for. And there has been research to show that upwards of 40 grams a day is especially protective, especially for certain types of cancers. Beans are also amazing because they're really inexpensive and they're widely available. So if you review that chart that's on I think it's going to be on your right-hand side of your screen. I just went to Kroger and I price compared different protein options, which legumes are a plant-based protein. And you can see here that the dry beans are exponentially cheaper than a beef or a chicken. So if I think we're all a little bit more budget conscious these days with inflation. So beans can be a helpful way to stretch your food budget as well. They're also extremely beneficial for our overall health of our planet, not just our personal health and well-being. One of the largest contributors to greenhouse gases is our industrial beef production in particular. So by swapping out, especially some of our red meat intake for legumes like beans and lentils, we can drastically reduce our carbon footprint and our impact on our planetary health. And then last but not least, beans are a really great source of high quality protein. I think we get asked as dietitians talking about whole food plant-based eating, we get asked questions about protein all the time, like where am I going to get it if I'm eating plants? Well, beans and lentils and soybeans, that's where you're going to get it from, these high quality plant foods that also have all those other added benefits that meat from animals doesn't have. Okay, so like I said, we get asked questions about protein from plants all the time. And these two questions, will I get enough? And do I need to combine foods to meet my protein needs, are kind of top of mind for most people. Will you get enough? Let's start there. The short answer is yes. While beans and lentils and soybeans and peas are highly concentrated sources of plant-based protein, most plant foods have at least some amount of protein in them. And most people already consume drastically more protein than we need. So a lot of us can actually stand to reduce our protein intake without any repercussions, negative repercussions for our health. And do you need to combine foods to get all the amino acids that your body needs? Amino acids are the building blocks of protein. They're strung together, and that's what makes up a protein. And some foods are higher in or lack certain amino acids. And so for a long time, it was thought that we had to combine like a bean and a grain together to get that full complement of the essential amino acids that our body can't make itself. And that has been refuted. And now we know that as long as you eat a diverse diet, so if you're thinking about eating the rainbow and you're not eating the same food every single day, then you're getting all of the essential amino acids that your body needs to make up the proteins that do the important work of enzymes and building muscle and all the other wonderful things that protein does in our body. So don't worry about combining your beans with a grain. Just make sure that, I mean, you can do that, it's tasty, but just make sure that you're eating a varied and diverse diet. One fun thing that I always like to share with people when we're talking about beans is that we're in the #1 state that produces black beans, cranberry beans, and small red beans, which is pretty cool. Who would have known? And most of that production, I'm going to hold up my Michigan map here, happens right here in the thumb. Okay, so if you're going to the grocery store and you're buying a package of dry beans or canned beans and the origin is the United States, most likely those black beans came from right here in Michigan, which is pretty cool. Okay, couple quick slides about cooking, and then we'll actually get to the cooking part. So when I'm talking to people about legumes, I often get asked the question of like, well, do I soak them? Do I not soak them? What are the benefits, pros and cons? You'll see a lot of recipes recommend soaking your beans in particular before cooking. And why that's recommended is that it does reduce the cooking time. So the soaking, the beans are able to absorb that water before you put them on the stove versus you having to, cook them and process that water into them during the cooking process. So it does reduce the cooking time anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the type of bean. It does also start to break down some of the starches that may cause GI distress for some people as well. So if beans are something that cause you a little bit of discomfort in your stomach, you may want to consider soaking your dry beans if you're going to be cooking with dry beans. And speaking of GI discomfort and gas, there are a few culprits that I think contribute to this problem for most people. One is beans are really high in fiber, like I mentioned previously. So if you are somebody that doesn't consume a lot of fiber right now, you want to go slow with your addition of beans. If you decide that after this presentation, I love legumes, I'm going to eat them all the time, which I hope that you do, but you've never really eaten them before. If you go to eating half a cup a day, you might start to have some digestive distress because your body's not used to eating that much fiber. So start slow. Start with a couple tablespoons and then work your way up over the course of a week or a couple of weeks up to that half a cup, cup and a half of legumes per day. And make sure too, as you're increasing your fiber intake, that you're also increasing your water intake. That's really important to make sure that you don't get any constipation. Okay. The other component of legumes that is sometimes a culprit for folks is raffinose. So this is a starch molecule that humans actually lack the enzyme to break down. So it ends up getting into our colon where our bacteria, which we have lots of really great bacteria in our colon, they ferment this sugar, and that can sometimes cause gas and bloating for folks. So if you're somebody that you're experiencing that and you don't think that it's related to the fiber, you can take a supplement like Beano that has that alpha galactose enzyme in it that can help break down that raffinose. Or you can do something like cook with kombu, which I've listed here. That is a seaweed. And I meant to bring some tonight, and I apologize. Maybe I'll post a picture in the follow-up email, but it is like sea kelp seaweed, and it has some enzymes in it that can help break down some of those hard to digest starches that are in beans. And it also helps with tenderizing the beans. So you just put a piece of it into your pot while you're cooking, and it can help reduce some of those GI issues as well. It also adds a nice umami taste and some trace minerals like iodine as well. So it's got some other added health benefits. And then you may have seen sprouted beans or lentils and things on the market. Sprouting can also reduce the raffinose too. So just, a couple things if that GI distress is something that you're really concerned about, those are a couple things that you can do. But back to cooking and how we handle these legumes. You can cook them on a stovetop. You can cook them in an Instapot, which is a multi-cooker, pressure cooker. You could also use a slow cooker to cook them. My personal preference, because I don't love having to watch a pot or remember that I put something on the stovetop for a couple hours because I get distracted, is using an Instapot or a slow cooker. The Instapot's really nice if you have the ability to invest in one because it reduces the cooking time exponentially, like more than in half. You can cook black beans from not soaked in 22 minutes, which is really great. So if you want black beans for dinner and you don't have canned lying around and all you have is dried and you didn't soak them, the Instapot is your friend. Okay. If you don't have time to, you don't have an Instapot, you don't have time to cook a pot of beans on your stove for a couple hours, there are some really quick cooking legumes so you can still get these really beneficial foods into your diet. Red lentils, which we're going to use today in one of our recipes, cook in 10 minutes. And they're really easy. And you can mix all sorts of different and seasonings in them to make a really flavorful, what's commonly referred to in Indian cooking as a dal. So it's just like a bean kind of, I don't want to use the word mush, but that's all that's coming to my head. I promise it's more appetizing than that. And then green and brown lentils, those also cook pretty quickly in about 20 minutes. And those have more of like a herbaceous, earthy kind of flavor. So they lend themselves well to being paired with, herbs, like in that herbs de Provence kind of spice mix. So your thyme, your tarragon, your oregano, those kinds of spices. And then there's always canned. Canned's totally fine. You can get canned lentils. You can get all sorts of different kind of canned beans. And if you're concerned about sodium, just rinse them. And that'll help remove a lot of the sodium. All right, and then some quick ways that if these recipes don't work out for you, or you're not quite ready to like go all in on a bean or lentil based recipe, think of some ways that you can sneak these health promoting foods into dishes that you already make. So last month we made a quick lentil bolognese. So we just mixed a can of lentils into our pasta sauce. That's really easy. And then if you could have that sauce without having to add meat into it, that's an option. Adding some into your soup, whether it's a meat-based soup or a fully veggie soup, adding a little bit of beans in there to start upping your intake is always a good idea. Chili is a great place to add beans if you're not already doing so. We're going to make some black bean tacos, and you could go again straight black beans, go all in, or you could mix them with a non-plant protein if you're not quite there yet. And then they're really tasty as a topping on salads or grain bowls. Sprinkling just a little bit on there, or having that full half cup for your serving. And they can also be a really great snack, especially in dip form. I love hummus. There's lots of different flavors of hummus out there. And you can also get edamame, which is soybean pods that you can steam in the microwave, put a little salt on, and then you just eat the bean out of the pod. They're kind of a fun party snack too. So some ideas to get you started, and we're going to go ahead and move over to the kitchen side of things now and get cooking, show you some recipes. So bear with me as I stop my slideshow for a second here, and we get on over to the kitchen. I'm going to take a drink of water too. Okay, our first recipe, hopefully you can all see me on. Oh, great. Okay, our first recipe we're going to start with is a curried cauliflower dish. So I'm going to bring my ingredients over here. This is on the website. It is a curried lentil and cauliflower stew. It's got some warming spices in it. It's very hearty. This is a dish that also has a lot of anti-inflammatory components in it too, and we'll talk through that. But this is a dish that I like to make at the beginning of the week, or I like to also gift it to people who've just had a baby or who are sick, because it's full of a lot of good stuff. So we're gonna start. I'm gonna turn my pan on here to get warm while we're chopping up. So the recipe calls for 1 onion diced and sauteed. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with that. And I just cut my onion. You can see me, right? Or no? You can see me? Yeah. Okay. I'm cutting my onion in half. So I did that by going down from the stem end towards the root, which is where all these little hairy bits are. And then I'm going to peel off the papery layer. I don't want that. It would be kind of bitter and not a fun textural experience in my dish. So I'm going to get rid of that. And then I'm going to place my cut side of my onion down on the cutting board. And what I'm going to do next is, I think we talked about this last time, but to proper holding of your knife, your thumb on one side of the blade, your first finger on the other side of the blade, and then your 3 fingers wrapped around the handle, nice and firm. Gives you a nice stable grip on that knife. We're going to trim off the ends that had kind of the little papery bits where the stem was. Okay. And then there are multiple ways to cut onions. I like to follow the lines on the edge of your onion. You'll see like there's kind of these stripes on your onion. So I make a C with my non-knife holding hand to keep my fingers out of the way. I use the tip of my knife to kind of slice along those ridges. I try to keep my slices evenly spaced because that's gonna make my diced pieces about the same size. We want to get our pieces about the same size so that they cook evenly. Okay, and now that I've made those slices, I'm going to go the opposite direction and again, evenly space my slices. And I'm going to put my oil in my pan. So that gets just using some olive oil. If you did not want to use oil, if you had a specific health condition that you're trying to avoid oil, you could use some water or some veggie broth for the saute. That will work just as well. And what we're going to do here is add these all into that pan with our warm oil and our onions right in here. And we're going to saute those. Just make sure to turn that up a little bit. We're going to saute those until they're translucent. And what I mean by translucent is I'll show you when they're done, but they're going to look a little glassy and kind of see-through. That's what we're going through it for. So I'm going to turn the heat up on this because I didn't hear it sizzle when I went on. Remove these chunks that didn't get cut. Okay. And our next ingredient in this dish is ginger. So I've got some ginger that's already cut up and diced, but I want to show you how I got there. So this is a ginger root. Those onions are getting my eyes. So apologize if I'm like getting teary-eyed over here. I really love ginger. This is a ginger root. It's really cheap at the grocery store. I think this ended up being about 25 cents for this chunk. You can also get it in powdered form if you prefer that. They're really kidding me. Actually, would you mind taking the chunks? Yeah, I'll be crying. Okay, so we want about 1 tablespoon of ginger for our recipe here. And I typically go to get to about a tablespoon. I look for about a 1-inch chunk of ginger. This is a little bit bigger than that, but we're gonna pretend that this is 1 inch. So 1 inch is about 1 tablespoon. Multiple ways that you can peel this. I like to keep my ginger in the freezer. It lasts a little bit longer. And when it's frozen, it's really easy, and also when it's fresh too, to peel with a back of a spoon. I like doing it this way because I feel like a vegetable peeler, you just take a little bit more of the flesh than I would like. I want to keep that behind so that I can put it into my recipe. So I just peel it with the back of a spoon. Okay, and then slice it into little discs. And then I make kind of little sticks with those discs, and then I just go back and forth over them until I get pieces that are finely minced. And things like ginger and garlic, you'll often see. Oh, I hear my onions sizzling now. You'll also often see in recipes, they call for them being minced. And that's because ginger and garlic are really flavorful, and we want them in tiny pieces so that that flavor infuses throughout our entire dish. And we don't get just like one big glob of flavor. So mincing is tiny little pieces, but you can see those kind of small pieces. That's about the size of a mince. Okay, so we're going to use about a tablespoon in our recipe, but for right now, our onions are still cooking, so we're going to hold off on that for the moment. We are, well, actually here, I'm actually going to add them in right now. We're getting close on our onions. So you can see, where's a good example of one? You can see, y'all seeing this, right? Yeah, okay. So they're starting to get a little glassy. I would typically, if I wasn't, during a cooking class, press a little bit for time, I would cook these a little bit longer before I added the ginger in, but we're going to do that right now. And it's going to be totally fine in the end. It's not going to be a problem. But I am going to turn off the heat on those. So I'm going to add about a tablespoon of my ginger. into here. And then I've also got some spices that we're going to be adding into the mix. So I have got some coriander and some cumin. And then I'm using garlic powder today, just to save a little bit of time. You could use some fresh garlic in here as well. A quarter teaspoon of powdered garlic or granulated garlic is equal to about 1 clove of garlic. So this recipe called for 2 cloves of garlic, so I added a half teaspoon of garlic powder. And I'm adding the spices right now because a lot of the beneficial health compounds and the compounds that provide a lot of the flavor are fat soluble, and I want them to cook with my olive oil here. And adding it here on the kind of the base of our stew is going to help that flavor infuse throughout our entire dish. So I'm just going to let that cook for a minute there, and then we'll transfer it over to our other dish. So I'm going to let that, turn that down, let cook for a second. And we're going to prep a couple of our other ingredients here. So this recipe also calls for 1 bell pepper and a cauliflower. We are going to start by cutting our bell pepper. So again, multiple ways that you can cut this. My preferred method is to set the long side of the bell pepper down, slice off the top, slice off the bottom, and that gives me a nice, firm, stable surface. And then I'm just going to cut around the seed part, slicing down the sides to get rid of that white pithy part as well. So I'm left with this. I'm going to set that aside. And I am going to take the top of my pepper and just kind of push my thumbs to pop out the stem and here. And I am going to go back to my onions, garlic, give those a stir. What you don't want to have happen is your spices to burn. If you were using red garlic cloves here too, you would have added them in at the same time as the spices, because it's really susceptible for those small pieces of garlic to burn and then it becomes bitter. So we don't want that to happen with any of these spices that we've put in there. I'm feeling good about that, so I'm going to turn that off. Okay, so I am going to set these all aside for right now. No, I'm not. I'm going to move these back. We're going to cut these. Okay, so we're getting these into bite-sized pieces here. And I'm just taking my rectangles that I've got of my peppers, and I'm going to slice down the sides of all of them. They're stacked on top of each other, slice down to get these sticks. Okay. And then I'm going to go across these sticks, get them into our bite-sized pieces. Okay. And I'm going to set those aside, and we're going to come back to our tops in a second. I am going to turn on my stock pot here. And I'm going to add my sauteed onions and spices into that stock pot. Let that, yeah, can I get, yeah, maybe put a towel there. Thank you. Okay. Got that in my stock pot, and now I'm going to be adding, I've got some low sodium vegetable broth. Okay. Add that into this pot. And if you're not worried about sodium, you could use regular vegetable broth. I think the low sodium is totally fine. And then we're going to add, can you give me that water? 4 cups of water. So we added 2 quarts of vegetable broth. We're adding 4 cups of water. And then we are going to add red lentils. So there's 2 cups. This is about a pound of red lentils. Remember, these are the ones that cook pretty quickly. So this is a fairly fast, easy dish. So we're dumping our red lentils in there. I'm gonna give that a stir. And then I'm gonna add in, I have 2 tablespoons of curry powder. I'm gonna add that in here as well. Curry powder, I think a lot of folks, when they hear curry, they think spicy, and sometimes, but curry powder is a blend of a variety of different spices. Often there's turmeric or cumin in there, but there's a lot of different spices that can be in a particular brand's spice or curry spice mix. So most of them are not spicy. I would just recommend playing around and trying some different ones to see which ones you enjoy the most. But this dish is not like a hot pepper spicy at all. If you wanted to add that flavor, you definitely could with some cayenne, or you could top this when it's finished with some sliced jalapenos. That would be super tasty. But as it stands right now, this curry, not spicy. Okay, so we're gonna let this come up. Yeah, I've got it on high, so that's good. We're gonna let this come up to a boil. We want this to cook for about 15 to 20 minutes total. But in about once it comes up to a boil and we let it cook for about 5 minutes, we're gonna add our peppers and some of our other ingredients. So we'll finish prepping some of those right now. Back to our pepper, we've got our bottom and our top still here to work with. So we've got, nice little bite-sized pieces from our pepper sides. I'm gonna take the bottom, make some nice slices here, and go the opposite direction. Get about the same size pieces as I got earlier. And the side, I'm not worried about being perfect. I'm just going around, cutting it up into pieces that are roughly same size. And I'm going to add that into my bowl with my cauliflower, which we're going to talk about in a second here. So we're going to dump this all in a few minutes. Okay, so cauliflower, it's a cauliflower curry. This is one of the main ingredients in here. This is half of a head of cauliflower. I removed the leaves from this already and sliced off part of the stem. And I also cut half of it so that you didn't have to just sit here and watch me cut cauliflower all night. How you cut the cauliflower, you would start with using this, slice the cauliflower in half. You're gonna see this section with the stem, the core. I like to take the tip of my knife, stick that down on one side, make an angled cut, stick that down the other side, make another angled cut. So I'm making like a V, and then it kind of pops the core out. Okay, and then you're left with these chunks. Now, you can break off some of these florets by hand into your bowl. If you've got some smaller pieces, that's a pretty quick, fast way to do it. You're looking for kind of bite-sized pieces like this. Again, this is a stew, so you're likely going to be eating it with a spoon. So you want to make sure that your veggies are going to be the size that fit onto a spoon. Some of these things I can't break up by hand, so I'm going to cut. And I'm just going to, again, work around the florets to get bite-sized pieces. Okay. And once I am done with this, I'm going to set it aside. And we'll get working on our second recipe, some black bean tacos. So this has taken a second to come up. It's still not quite boiling, and I want that to boil for about 5 minutes before I add in my cauliflower and peppers, and then we've got some carrot and sweet potato that we'll be adding as well. I'm gonna get this all together. Okay, set this aside. Thanks for your patience as I do some, kitchen logistics here. All right, so our second recipe, black bean tacos. This is a recipe, like I said earlier, kid approved. This is one of those recipes that you could, if you've got meat eaters in your family, you could still cook some meat on the side to have that as part of this, or you can make it fully plant-based. To start, we're making our own refried beans for this. And to start, what I did is I already went ahead and sauteed some onions because we just did that for the other recipe. So I didn't think you needed to watch that twice. So these are sauteed onions that have had some spices added to them already. So we've got chili powder, cumin, and some garlic powder as well right in here. And we are going to warm that up again. And to that, we are going to add 2 cans of black beans that have been rinsed and drained. If you're cooking with dry beans, this is about 3 cups of dry beans. So you could totally do it from dry beans as well. And then we're going to add half a cup of water into our pan. And we are going to let that simmer on here for about 10 to 15 minutes. And the whole point of what we're doing here is to soften up these beans because we are going to use this handy dandy potato masher to mash these up in a few minutes. And I want them to get soft. I want the flavor from those spices to infuse into the beans. It's going to make this a much tastier, enjoyable dish. So we're going to let that do its thing for a few minutes. And it looks like, let's check our lentil mixture here. Looks like that's doing pretty well. Getting up to speed there. Okay, so then with our tacos, we also are making a cabbage slaw. So that cabbage slaw is something that we can put inside the taco fillings or have it off to the side. I've already taken the liberty of thinly slicing half a cabbage just to show you what that looks like. It's kind of like coleslaw sized pieces, really thin here. We are going to massage this cabbage slaw. It's a raw cabbage slaw. Cabbage is a cruciferous vegetable, which is really a powerful source of sulforaphane, which is a really powerful precursor to kind of a master antioxidant in our body. So eating raw cruciferous vegetables is very beneficial for our health. This is one way to do it, a tasty way to do it. I'm taking a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm sprinkling that on top of this cabbage, and I am just literally massaging it. So this salt is kind of helping me and the physical act of me scrunching up this cabbage is helping to break down some of the cell walls of this cabbage and tenderize it. Okay. Our lentils look like they're doing pretty good. So I'm going to pause with my massaging for a second here and add in, we've got 3 large carrots, 1 medium sweet potato that has been peeled and diced, thanks to Laura. And you can see those pieces, she did a beautiful job. They're bite size. Those are going to cook evenly. That's what we're looking for. Got that in here. And then I've got my 1 head of cauliflower and my 1 bell pepper. That's also going to go in here. Okay. Thank you, Miss Laura. I'm going to give that a stir. And then we're going to let that cook, do its thing until the end of class. While I'm checking that, I give our beans a little check here. They're not quite up to temp, so we'll let them hang for a second. Okay, so then I must give our cabbage slaw a little bit more of a massage. You only need to do this for 1 to 2 minutes for it to be effective. And important, since you're using your hands to massage this, definitely want to make sure your hands are washed. Mine were before class started. So you want to make sure they're washed before you scrunch it up. We have a dressing for that cabbage slaw that is a 1/4 cup of olive oil. Okay, you could skip that if you wanted to. I think that it adds, it's nice to have that liquid to help coat the cabbage, but you could totally skip it if you wanted to as well. And then we're going to do 2 avocados. So I like to cut avocado by taking the fat part on the bottom, slicing down until I feel the pit and I feel the resistance from the pit. Then I kind of lay it down on its side, twist my knife around the the avocado around the knife as it's pressed into the pit. And then I've got my 2 handy dandy halves. To take the pit out, I set the avocado down on the cutting board, press my knife into the pit firmly, twist, and it pops right out. So that makes it a snap. Then I will take my handy dandy silicone scooper and scoop it out into my bowl here. And this is a pretty large avocado, so I think actually I'm just gonna do 1 because it's pretty big. And you can do that whenever you're cooking at home. You don't have to follow the directions exactly. Recipes are always suggestions, and as you develop your skills and your awareness, you will be able to kind of judge that for yourself. Like, do I need 1 avocado? Do I need 2? Do I want to add a little bit more salt? Do I want to add a little bit more cumin? Experiment, play with it. So we're going to mash this avocado into the olive oil. A fork would be a great way to do this. You don't need any fancy tools. You could use that that potato masher right here, like I was showing you earlier. Definitely an option as well. I'm just using the back of the silicone spoon because this avocado is actually really ripe. And so this is pretty easy to mash everything in. So I've got that all mashed together. And next, what I'm going to do is add in the juice of a couple limes. So 2 limes. Okay. I am slicing the limes in half. Okay. And then I've got a citrus juicer right here. So this is a handy tool. If you don't have one of these, it makes working with citrus a snap. So definitely would recommend this. You place the cut side down and then squeeze. And we're going to do both these halves. So this is adding some nice brightness and some vitamin C to our dish, and is really going to kind of make everything pop and come together. I am actually going to get a fork to mix this up now that it is a little more liquid. So I'm blending all these things together. Another tool that you could use if you have an immersion blender or a stick blender and you wanted a really smooth dressing, an immersion blender would be a really great way to mix this up as well. Okay, so I'm just incorporating that lime juice, and I'm kind of mashing a little bit more as I'm going. I'm going to add some garlic powder, a 1/4 teaspoon, which is about 1 clove, and then a 1/2 teaspoon of cumin as well. To give that a stir. And then I am ready to go to add it into my cabbage slaw. I like to start, every head of cabbage is a little bit differently sized. So, and some are more dense than others. So you might get more volume out of some cabbage than others. So I like to start by adding just a little bit of my dressing at a time. So I'm going to add about 1/2 of it in here to start. And then I am going to give this a stir. It's not quite coated as I'm stirring. So I think I'm gonna add a little bit more. And again, this is one of those preference things. So you could add it, taste it. If you feel like you want a little bit more dressing on that, great. Add a little bit more dressing. If you feel like you want a little bit more lime juice on that, great. Cut another lime and squeeze that on there. If you don't like cumin, okay, you can leave it out. Add a little bit more in there. Give this a stir. And we are good to go. There's our cabbage slaw. So I'm going to set that aside because we're going to come back to that when we top our tacos. And I'm going to check my beans here. And I'm going to test them with the back of my, they're starting to mash a little bit. So I'm going to move over and use my potato masher. Okay, now if after a few minutes your beans aren't mashing, just cook them longer. And if you notice that they are starting to stick a little bit, you can just add a little bit more water. It's not going to hurt anything. It's totally fine. I don't need this to be perfectly smooth necessarily. I'm just looking to get them somewhat mashed together because I want to spread them on my taco shell. So if you can see here, we still have some whole pieces, but they're starting to clump together as I'm breaking apart some of them as well. Mash this until it's the desired consistency that you want. Again, if you want it to be really smooth, you could use that immersion blender. This would be a really great application for that as well. All right. Now we are ready with our mashed beans. We are going to assemble our taco. I've got some corn tortillas here. And typically what I like to do with these corn tortillas, whole grain. So these are a whole grain option, which we're going to talk about whole grains next month. Oh, all of them are falling apart. I want to get a whole one. Right, here's a whole one. So typically what I would do is warm these before I made a taco with them. It makes them a little bit more pliable and less likely to fall apart. And I think they taste a little bit better. So you would just heat up your skillet, place them, 10, 20 seconds on either side to get warmed up. We're going to pretend that we did that. And we are going to take a little bit of our bean mixture, place that in the center of our taco here. And then I've got a few different toppings for us here. We've got some sliced jalapenos. If you slice them the round way, they're going to be a bit spicier. You can slice down the side of the pepper to avoid the pith and the seeds, and it'll be a little bit milder. That's your preference. Got some sliced avocado and some sliced carrot. I'm going to take some of my sliced carrot to start. I'm going to come back to my cabbage slaw because that's one of our topping options too. I'm going to put a little scoop of that in here. Add a couple slices of my jalapeno. And then I have some cilantro to garnish. And there you go. There's your taco. Pretty fast, pretty easy, plant-based, very tasty. Like I said, even kids love this recipe. So you've got your plant-based taco. Realize we're coming up on time here, and I had one more recipe, but it's really fast and really easy. So we're just gonna do it if you don't mind going a couple minutes over. Our stew is mostly cooked. Siri doesn't understand what I'm saying. Our stew is mostly cooked. You can see that the colors have deepened. The cauliflower, what I'm looking for is for these lentils to be soft and kind of creating like a smooth, almost texture throughout this dish. The cauliflower to be soft, the carrots and the sweet potato to be on the softer side. Typically, this takes about 20 minutes. It may take less or more time depending on the intensity of the heat that you have this on. But this stew is done. It's fragrant. It's really, really tasty. Good for a cold day. Our last and final recipe is a chickpea salad. So instead of a chicken salad or a tuna salad, this is a really great sandwich option. We've got 1 can of chickpeas, 2 to 3 tablespoons of tahini, which is sesame seed paste. So it's like peanut butter, but instead of peanuts, it's sesame seeds that are all mixed together. A 1/4 cup of pickles diced up. We're using pickles instead of relish because relish, a lot of it has high fructose corn syrup in it and a lot of processed ingredients that we're trying to avoid. So I'm using this Vlasic lightly salted pickle. It's just pickles and salt and water. Dumping that in here. I've got a tablespoon of maple syrup. A 1/2 teaspoon of capers, which are a bud of a plant. If you don't have this, capers adding a little bit of saltiness and kind of vinegary tang. If you don't have capers, chopped green olives would work as well. So we're going to add those in. A teaspoon of Dijon mustard. You could use spicy brown mustard. I would try to use something other than just regular yellow mustard. It just adds a different depth of flavor, but the yellow mustard would totally work too if that's all you have. A 1/4 cup of chopped celery. And then we have also got some green onions. So I'm going to take the green onion bottoms. I'm going to slice off the little root ends, and we can use this whole green onion. So the white part and the green tops. And I'm going to add that in here as well. Stir it up. And voila, you have got chickpea salad. Now, if you wanted this to be a little bit more mashed together, you could totally take this potato masher type tool or a fork. And before you add in all those other ingredients, mash the chickpeas until you want to keep some of them whole, but if you would mash most of them down, and then it'll start sticking together and be more like an egg salad type consistency. Totally up to you. But this is a really, really tasty, super easy, very fast recipe. Great for on top of salads, stuffed into a pita pocket. Really, really easy. So those are our 3 recipes. I appreciate you bearing with me as we go a little bit over and got a lot of moving parts. But I do want to wrap up and share the class website and see if there were any questions as well. So I'm going to move back over to my PowerPoint.
While you do that, I would take that Pyrex and scoop some of that.
Oh, and show.
Really.
Yeah. Okay. I was instructed, you all couldn't really see the lentil stew. So here I'm going to move some into a glass container so you can see what this looks like. Okay. So it's nice and golden in color, as you can see. The spices are really aromatic. So we eat with our nose too. This is a really wonderfully smelling dish. It'll make your whole house smell wonderful when you make it. Lots of veggies, lots of good plant-based protein. Ginger and the turmeric and the curry are anti-inflammatory compounds as well. So very health promoting as well.
And then just pour it back.
Awesome. So let me go back to our slides. And if anybody needs to leave, I apologize that we're running over. You are more than welcome to. Do not feel like you have to stay with us here. Just pull it up. All right, so I mentioned that there are more classes in this series. If you would like to register for the other classes and you have not done so, please scan that QR code, The class website is on the right-hand side of the screen. That's where all of our recipes from today and from previous classes will live. That's where the recording from today will also live. So if you want to reference anything that we talked about in class tonight, please go to that website. And then I do have a quick survey. If you wouldn't mind completing this, it takes about 4 minutes. This helps us make sure that these classes are relevant for you and for other folks in the community. And it's really valuable as we evolve our programs. So please take a few minutes to scan that QR code, fill out the survey. I'll also send that out in our follow-up email as well. I'll give you a second to scan that. Okay, thank you so much. And if you all have any questions that we didn't get to answer today, lifestyle medicine at trinity-health.org is our email address. Again, that's lifestyle medicine at trinity-health.org. Please email us. We're always happy to talk. We love, talking about cooking and answering folks' questions. So don't hesitate to reach out. Really value you spending your time on Valentine's Day, no less, with me to learn about beans and cook through these 3 recipes. I hope you learned something, and I hope that you'll come back and join us next month when we talk about whole grains. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening. Take good care.